Okay, we're rolling. Who are you? What are you running for? And what's your party?
Yeah, hi, my name is Dr. Devyani Singh. I'm a climate scientist and also an economist, and I'm running for Vancouver City Council with the Green Party of Vancouver.
Beautiful. What are your top 3 priorities?
For me personally, because I'm a climate scientist, I'm an immigrant, I'm a queer woman of color, I'm a renter and below median income earner in the city. So for me, the top 3 would be bold climate action, truly affordable housing, and I'd like to see complete connected communities.
Absolutely. And now you've educated me a bit. There's quite a lot of scientists in the Green Party, and you're one of them. Could you speak a little bit about that?
We agreed the Greens believe in evidence-based decision making, and that's actually one of the things that really interested me about the Green Party was that, it's not about just rhetoric or what sounds good or we make decisions or I've seen our elected officials make decisions to please people. It's actually based on evidence, the science, and good discussions behind the scenes between the elected Greens and other members who can inform them on policy before we make the decisions.
I really appreciate that because I think there's a lot of guesstimating, and that wasn't really acceptable in high school, so I don't know if the government should be doing that. What does housing mean to you? Because I've kind of found that people are using it in maybe like 4 different ways. What's your definition of housing?
Oh, I truly believe that everyone should be able to live where we work and study, and I truly believe in that. In the last 2 years, most of my friends who are grad students have left the city because they can't afford to live here. During my PhD for 7 years at UBC, I've been paying 100% of my stipend for renting. Like, that is not sustainable. So for me, housing should be affordable, it should be accessible, it should be equitable, and it should be climate resilient. And I add climate resilient because we've noticed in the last year, when the heat dome happened, we lost about 100 people in the city itself. And with the changing climate, look at that, we're in mid-October and we haven't had rain. The salmon's dying in the interior.
I'm so hot right now.
Exactly. We need to build climate resilient housing. That means mandating maximum and minimum temperatures. We need it to be affordable and truly affordable. Right now, what we call affordable housing in the city is tied to market rent. And market rent is not affordable for half the people in the city. So what we as Greens believe affordability is 30% of your income. So then when you target that, you can target housing for different income bands, not just for the median income and above when it gets tied to market rentals. And when I call accessible, is it accessible for people with disabilities? Is it accessible for older people? Is it accessible for families? I know a lot of places where my friends have had children and had to move out. Is it accessible even for somebody like me with pet owners? A lot of, like, when I'm looking for rentals with a pet, it's really hard to find housing. And when I mean equitable, it's about, looking at, can I, as a person of color, a queer person, a woman, can I find safe housing where I am not being denied access to? So those are the things that I mean. When I talk housing, I care about affordability, accessibility, equity, and climate resilience.
Beautiful. And now you shared with me that only a couple months after getting your residency, that you actually ran for office. Can you tell that? Can you summarize that little journey?
Yeah, I actually just became a citizen the week the world shut down in 2020 in March. And I'm a climate scientist who does a lot of policy relevant research. By that I mean doing research that directly answers some of these questions we face in policy. So how do we enable a just transition away from fossil fuel? How do we do better detection and quantification of methane emissions from oil and gas? And so I was doing this science along with my colleagues, and I was just not seeing it make it into politics. And being a person who's working in the field and knowing through models and every day looking outside what's coming, I'm terrified about our future. I was angry and frustrated at all levels of government for the lack of will to take action. And so when the snap elections in 2020 got called in BC, I figured, I'm like, if the politicians aren't going to listen to the science, I'm going to take the science to them. And I threw my hat in the ring, and here I am.
That's amazing. I'm so glad you're here. What are your plans for homelessness? Or, what are your pre-plans? Maybe.
Yeah, and I think one of the things is that, we tend to think of the homeless people as different from us. What we don't realize is that these are our family members, these are our friends, And these are people that have fallen through the cracks of society because of, I like to blame it on capitalism and unchecked capitalism, and but we need to deal with it with compassion. And so the homelessness crisis and the opioid crisis kind of like are very interconnected, especially in the downtown east side. And so one of the things I'd like to see is, first of all, weather is going to change soon, even though we think we're going to be in endless summer.
Yes, yeah.
It's about, can we get them safe housing? Not like the under-kept and under-serviced, shelters or SROs that we have, but can we quickly get them a good roof over their head? And what I've heard about is that have been a great success are these tiny home communities and transition spaces. And so, first of all, get people somewhere where they can lock their belongings, provide them with a running access to water and washrooms 24 hours a day, a place where they can sleep, the roof over their head, as you wait for more permanent housing. Because when we talk about, a lot of parties say, we're going to build this much social housing and that much supportive housing and X, Y, Z. It's not going to get built overnight. What's your plan for the interim?
Yes.
What's going to happen to the people? We keep moving them away. We keep doing these sweep cleans and things in the downtown east side. But where are they supposed to go? Right? So can we provide that? And the city has a lot of empty parking lots. We can put these like tiny homes
thank
up
you
there.
for bringing that up, because I've said time and time again, this city has more space for cars than people.
Exactly, and we have empty parking lots. We can put a bunch of these tiny homes, create washrooms, create like a space where they can work. And
I have a bunch of plans for that too. So that's and Pete Fry also mentioned that, and I was like, I've got a better price for you. But let's do it.
I will talk to you, and I would love to know, because I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the solutions. But like I said, I'm a scientist, and I know there are people out there who've done the research, who've studied this in different cities. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. This has been done worldwide. In fact, I saw in Finland, they were putting people in buses, and every homeless person gets access to housing and mental health support, no questions asked. And they're most of them are off the streets within a year.
Yeah.
Like, why can't we do that?
Even booted cars or something would be, like just bloody anything.
Yeah. So that's what I'd like to do is, try to find something safe, something secure, get people off the streets, give them the access to water, access to dignified shelter, and we need access to services and mental health as well. And and I think that is the start. But I would love to speak with experts who've done the work in the downtown east side, who know a lot more than I do, and help implement that.
Absolutely. And now, given that it's kind of a little linked, but what do you think has gone wrong in our downtown east side, from like the mayor and council perspective?
I think from what I've heard, right, because I'm new to the whole municipal politics thing, is from what I've heard is there's two
But
things.
I just want to make sure people know that you do provincial and federal politics, so you're not new to all politics,
No.
just municipal.
But I'm trying to learn the differences in jurisdiction, and so I think there's two things. One is that there's been a lot of downloading from the province in terms of the load that the city has to take on, and the other has been that I personally have seen, and not just relating to the downtown east side, but a lot of things that we haven't had enough progressives on council. And so a lot of things that wanted to be done have either narrowly passed with a 6-5 vote or failed with a 6-5 vote.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard, right? And so I think one thing is that getting a progressive council that can work collaboratively, getting people elected who are just going to fight with each other is not going to solve anything, because nothing will ever get passed, even if you're all left. Mm-hmm. Right? The thing is about, can you work with other people? And the other is, how can we get the province to take more responsibility? But in the interim, I think there are things the city can do, like I was talking about, like tiny homes and shelters like that the city can do while we wait for the other levels of government to step up.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like to be reasonable about it, it takes time. Buildings take time. Permits take time.
Exactly.
Permits should not take so long, but they take time.
But I also think we can work with other municipalities in Metro Vancouver, because I feel that we do take a large chunk of the crisis. And
that's
I
interesting. Yeah, no one's really brought that up.
But I think the others, why isn't Burnaby or Surrey and New West, and why aren't they all working too? Look at the number of.
I think that even the concept of Metro Van kind of confuses people a little bit, because you have City of Vancouver and then you have Metro Van. Mm-hmm. and they kind of work a little bit differently. Do you know any of the differences between?
So, I mean, yeah, so the city is like our borders, and then Metro Vancouver is like I think it's like, it's like all the other, like, what we call suburbs in Vancouver,
Yeah.
really different municipalities. But yeah, like, so what would be ideal would be, instead of like Vancouver just like expending all our resources, it could be great to get like a regional strategy going, kind of like divide and rule, which is not what I want to do because the British did that to India and it screwed us up. But in a way, like, spreading out the resources, or pooling the resources is more the way I look at it. And, I think we can work together. I think it's a lot of these issues go beyond our borders, like the housing crisis, climate crisis, things like that. We need to work a lot more with the Lower Mainland and Metro Vancouver to solve these issues.
Absolutely. And speaking of colonialism, you come from a former British colony. What is your perspective as, also that's a people that's been oppressed by specifically British colonialism? How is India faring at this point?
Well, I'll put it this way. Before we were colonized, we were literally the jewel in the crown. We were a place where we had the world's biggest universities. People used to come from world over to study in India. There were Chinese scholars traveling through India, like, I forget, early centuries, who would write that we've traveled through this land and we haven't seen one poor person and one unhappy person. This is how rich and vibrant we were. And look at us today. People think we're a land of slums, and we're a bunch of poor people who can't do
that
anything.
one damn.
So what did colonialism do? That's what colonialism did to us. And capitalism started from colonialism, and climate change is a result of all of that. And so, yeah, for me, that's all connected.
Yeah. In terms of, like we have these concepts of truth and reconciliation here. Is that something that you've experienced in your home country?
So we were the colonized, and we got rid of our colonizers.
Yeah. So it's a little different.
It's a little different. But what I found so strange was when I moved here, that Canadians didn't know about the residential school system. A lot of them like understood the horrors of it and things like that. Growing up in India, I learned all about it.
Really?
Right? Yeah, I knew more about Canadian history and genocide and residential school system than most Canadians I met when I moved here.
Wow.
And the same in the U.S. In India, we truly learned everything in our history books about the global history, what happened in the world. Maybe because we learned about the genocide and all because our books weren't written from the point of the colonizer, right? History is written from the eyes of the victor, right? But for us, our history books weren't written by white people. I mean, the British system did
a couple, but yeah.
But it did include, like, we learned about all of this. But most Canadians didn't know about it. Which is, so that when you bring that truth and reconciliation up, for me it's very interesting that even today, I speak to some Canadians on the streets, I know more about the history of this land than a lot of Canadians do.
Yeah.
And that's not because I did the research. Once I came here, I already knew it. Of course I didn't.
Yeah, that's just wild to me.
But I
That's just
already
wild.
knew it as well.
Yeah, like I've kind of said to a few people that it's hard for me to understand people not understanding privilege because my parents taught me that I had privilege when I was under 10 years old. I'm not on camera currently, but most people know that I'm quite a light-skinned Black woman. And I was able to get that concept that, they said, you are Black, both of your parents are Black, never forget that, that's beautiful, but this is how you're gonna come off to other people, this is how you're gonna come off to our own people. You need to be mindful of that and always put someone that doesn't look like you ahead of you or bring them along with you. Yeah. Do you have any, similar?
Oh yeah, I didn't grow up with having a lot of racism thrown at me because I was with a bunch of brown people in India. When I first moved to the US in 2005, I remember I had Iowa license plates and I was driving in Minnesota. I got pulled over by a cop for doing 5 over the limit. And the cop looks at me and goes, "Where are you from?" And I'm like, "Iowa." Because obviously my license plates say that, like I was on a road trip. And he's like, "No, I mean that accent. You should go back to where you came from. You have no place in this country." And I was like, all right, at that point, he's not going to listen to reason. I got a $200 ticket for 5 over the speed limit. Then another time I was out drinking with friends at a Vancouver beach. The cops come by, which is why I'm all for the drinking in open spaces over here, because people will drink. What happens is now no longer the indigenous or the people of color who get policed. I was with a bunch of white friends. The cops made my white friends pour out their drinks, and I got slapped with a ticket.
Wow.
So when we talk about that, I thought I had privilege, because I do have a lot of privilege still. I don't know why in this city. It's not like I am rich or anything. I'm not very white passing, but somehow I end up getting
you're very smart and you're very lovely. I think that would be two of the things.
But I still have that, and that's what I tell people. I'm like, I'm still privileged. Imagine non-binary people, trans people, people who don't sound well or like look well, but who have other issues in life. Like, they face so much more than I do.
Yeah.
And I just have a window into the discrimination that they face.
Yeah, exactly. And I just shared some of my police/healthcare problems with you, and it's the same thing. If what I told you could happen to me just because I didn't do my hair, imagine someone darker than me, imagine someone native, imagine some this, that, and that, and how much more dangerous that these systems are. What do you think went wrong with our last administration?
I don't know if things really went wrong. I think we've had this issue for a long time now. It's only been getting worse. So I don't know if we can blame everything on the last council, because we know policies take a while to take effect. So I would say it's the last few city councils. I wouldn't say
that's accurate, because we also did have COVID, so that took away a lot of
And we were trying to adapt, moving suddenly from in-person, everything to online.
Yeah.
COVID affected people worldwide.
So we didn't get really
jobs.
a full term in a way.
Exactly. And so I would be willing to give the previous council a benefit of doubt, because they did get thrown with something we hadn't experienced before. But also, I see it myself, you put policies in place, you're not going to see the results for the next 4 to 8 years, right? So I would say it's been the past few councils, and I think a lot of that has to do with understanding collaboration. You see how dirty politics is, and that's one of the things I actually like about the Greens. You'll never see us say this party is bad, or this party did that, or call names on social media. But you see a lot of other parties. It's all about you.
Yeah, it's getting thicker by the day.
And then they get rude. They call people names. We get called names, but we don't react. And that's one of the things I like about the Greens, is we keep it clean. We are here to do the work. And that's what I'm like. I tell people as a scientist, I'm here to do the work. I'm here to listen to you. But if you start calling me names and you start harassing me, I don't have time for that, because I want to get work done. And that's taking precious mental and physical energy away from something I could actually do good. And I think that's what's been the problem, is we say we want to collaborate as people, or the previous councils, but there's literally been very few councillors who've actually tried to collaborate with each other. Mm-hmm. And I think once we elected, we should totally forget that we are Green, or we One City, or ABC, or NPA, or Team, or whatever. We are literally, now we work for everybody in the city.
Yeah.
And we should no longer have any party affiliations once selected until the next election cycle.
Yeah,
I would love to see that.
Yeah, not having a majority is really in the best interest of the whole city, because then everyone's represented in some way. And I've met a lot of progressive and really good candidates. So especially for the council, I think it's going to be diverse in a lot of different ways and skill sets and
which is why the Greens have never run a majority. And when I was telling you about earlier about the global Greens, we believe in coalitions. We don't believe in majorities. Mm-hmm. And so we believe that, like you said, coalition governments work better for the people, because then you have to discuss rather than pushing through your viewpoint, which might not necessarily represent everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's enough. You've answered more than enough questions. Just one more time, who you are, what you're running for, and how we can find you on the internet.
Yeah, my name is Dr. Devyani Singh. I am a climate scientist, and I am running for City Council with the Greens. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Kumari, KUMARI _Devyani, DEVYANI. I also have a Facebook page, but I'll be honest, I only look at it during election time. So the best way to get me is Twitter, and then secondly Instagram. But I will throw out a shout out for my little puppy. He has his own Instagram, and that one I'm very active with. And he's called West Coast Panda Boy, but boy with a B-O-I. He's a husky Aussie. So look him up.
Amazing. Thank you.